Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. I've got a bunch of stuff going on around the shop, and you're going to notice everything looks different today. So I had to move some cars around the shop, and so here in the main shop you can see the dually's outside. I'll show you that in a second, but we've got the Mustang pushed over to the front of the shop over here. The King's Cobra is, of course, where the dually was, kind of. We've got, the compressor moved around. I had to get the Ranger pickup in the shop to replace the fuel pump. So you can see I've got it up on the lift, and I've already got the tank out, which was a complete nightmare. But I've had the dually sitting outside for a couple days. It's not going to hurt it. It's not raining, thankfully, but the dually's sitting outside the shop right now. And I'm working on the Ranger today. I know this isn't your favorite kind of content if you came here for, Cobra and Cobra related stuff, but this is just kind of the way it is. We do more than just work on Cobras here. So I'm going to work on the Ranger today, and I'll bring you right back and tell you what we've got kind of in store. All right, if you go back a few videos, you'll remember that I replaced the fuel injectors in the Ranger. And what I was fighting was a hard start issue. Basically, if I go to start the Ranger after it's already been running for the day, it takes forever to start. And so what I got in the habit of doing is cycling the key on and off, 2-3 times, to get enough fuel pressure to the fuel injectors so that it would start. So I didn't know if I was leaking down pressure on one or more of the fuel injectors, or whether it was something having to do with the fuel pump. So dropping the tank in this thing is a nightmare, and I'll get into that in just a second. But the easiest, most cost-effective way of kind of diagnosing it was to change the fuel injectors, because I could see with the fuel pressure gauge, because I have a manual fuel pressure gauge that goes on the Schrader valve of the fuel lines up at the injectors. I could see that the pressure was dropping as soon as the fuel pump was turned off. So as soon as it cycled on, as you're turning the key to start it, it would go up in pressure and it would drop right back down. So not a good sign. It either meant that the regulator was bad in the tank, which is what we actually found, or that one of the fuel injectors or more were leaking down after you initially turned the key. So after I replaced the fuel injectors, I drove the truck for a couple of days, and the problem just persisted. And so what I did is I just ran the tank down as far as I felt comfortable running it down, because I've never run the tank dry to know exactly, how many miles after the light comes on, when it's going to run out. So we worked on getting the fuel tank out of it. Mrs. IE427 came out to the shop. She helped me. The worst part of getting the tank out is getting on top of the tank to get the connectors for the fuel lines apart. There are all these push lock type of connectors where you have to push in this release kind of tab to get the fuel line to come off of the spout or the tube, and I couldn't see them. So I didn't know if the lock had to be pried up and removed to get the line off, or if they had to be pushed. And I finally found a decent video on the exact year and model of this truck on YouTube that I was able to find out that they are indeed the pushed style. And so with the limited accesses that I had, getting in from the top, I could push them, and I got all of them off. And that by far was life-saving, because not knowing what kind of connector they were, I didn't want to break one. And I'll turn the camera around and I'll kind of show you that I think the tank had been, or the fuel pump had been replaced before, because one of the connectors was broken. All right, so this is the connector that was broken. And luckily, this is only the vent tube. And I'm gonna replace the hose portion of it. I looked for this connector online, but it's an odd size. It's just a little bit bigger than 3/8. I have some 3/8 90s here in the shop, because we've used those for some of the Cobra builds. And it's this is the new fuel pump. It's this tube right here. And it just happens to be just a tick bigger than the 3/8 one right here. So you know, this is the supply to the fuel injectors. This is the return, and this is the vent for the gas tank. So if we look at the other side, you'll see that this return has the fuel pressure regulator right here. And that is what determines the fuel pressure at the rail. So you can see on the other side of it, it's just the return tube that feeds down into the bottom of the tank. This center tube, right? It just stops right here. That's the vent for the actual tank. And then this one right here is the supply to the fuel injector rails. I just don't want this thing to roll off the lift. This one right here is the supply, and that one goes right into the fuel pump right there. So it's an all-inclusive unit. And this is the charcoal canister. So this tube right here, this big one, and this was the most difficult connector to get off. This goes back to the area above the spare tire, where the charcoal canister is for this one, for the evap system. So very, very complex, a lot of stuff going on in the fuel pressure regulator and fuel pump portion of the fuel pump assembly. And then on top of all of that, you've got the fuel level sensor, which is right here. So there's a lot of stuff going on at the back of the truck in the fuel tank with this unit. Everything's all in one. So here's the problem that we had getting the tank out. The tank, you can see this portion right here in the front of the tank right here. It's indented on the bottom. And that portion of the tank goes right above this cross member right here. So this cross member right here, the tank goes up and over it. And so you can't get the tank far enough back because it starts hitting the axle, and you can't get it far enough back because you've got all the tubes still connected to it. So it'll only drop down as much as this indent in the tank will allow it to kind of come down before it's pulling against all the tubes that are on top of it. Now, the easiest way to change the fuel pump, if you've just got a standard bed on the back of the truck, is to pull the bed or slide the bed back, and then everything's exposed. But as you can see, we've got the bed, a bed liner, toolboxes, and a rack. And so it would take me probably a day with the time that I have, because I would only have a portion of the day to get all that stuff out, and then find a place to store it while I'm pulling the bed off to replace the fuel pump. And so I figured it'd be better to get it here in the shop, get it up on the lift, and pull it out from below. And that was hard because there are not many YouTube videos on doing it this way. So that's the way everybody does everything now. you go online, you look at a YouTube video, and you figure out the best way to do it. Well, all the videos on YouTube, majority of them, said, oh, pull off the bed. Well, yeah, great. Easy for you. But I figured that since I was going to do it this way, I'd get the truck up on the lift and then kind of give the truck a once over and see what else needed fixing. And for instance, I have a list over on the whiteboard of all the vehicles and what each of the vehicles needs as far as maintenance. And one of the issues that I had for this truck was front shocks. The shocks that are on here have 100 and almost 20,000 miles on them. They're original. They're not leaking. They still seem to work. They do shock things. But the last time I was on Rock Auto, I saw a sale on some shocks, and so I purchased the shocks. And then, of course, one of them ended up not coming with some of the hardware, so I had to replace that. But regardless, since I'm replacing the shocks, the truck has not had the inner fender liner since I bought the truck. I bought the truck used. I think I bought it with about 68,000 miles on it. And the only reason I bought the truck was because the dealer that I bought it from, who we bought cars from in the past, sweetened the deal by telling me they would throw in a extended warranty for 3 years and unlimited mileage. So regardless of how many miles I put on the truck in 3 years, it would be covered bumper to bumper. And they made that part of the deal on the money portion of what we had agreed upon when we purchased the truck. And I was able to get a really good financing plan, and it was all contained in those 3 years. So I really got a good deal on this truck. And I wanted another Ranger because the Ranger that I had previously was the 4-cylinder model, which I loved. It was just a single cab short bed with the same rack and the same toolboxes, but it was a 5-speed. And as much as I like driving a stick shift, the job that I was working on, the one job that I was working on, which was down in Orange County, put me on the 91 freeway at the end of the expressway at rush hour every freaking day. And driving in stop and go traffic with the arthritis in my feet was just killing me. I mean, by the time I made the turnabout at the 71 freeway to go north to go home, I was in so much pain. I was literally in tears. I hate using the term literally, but I was in a lot of pain. And so I made the decision, actually we made the decision, that we were going to sell the 4-cylinder 5-speed Ranger that I had had for 10 or 12 years, and we were going to purchase one with an automatic and a V6 to just make my life a little bit easier. And really, up to this point, I've had no issues with this truck. Everything that we've done to this truck has been purely maintenance, and now the truck's getting to that age where some of the stuff needs to be replaced. That's why I didn't feel bad about replacing the fuel injectors, because they'd been in the truck for 100 and some odd thousand miles. They probably needed replacing anyway. So with that, I did invest in a very good, high quality stock style fuel injector for this truck so that I wouldn't have to worry about changing injectors again for a long time. But a lot of this other stuff just needs to be maintained. And I believe this fuel pump had been changed previously. I haven't pulled it out of the gas tank yet, but I do believe that it is a replacement fuel pump. It may be a Motorcraft fuel pump that's in there, but because of what I found, I believe it's been replaced before. And that vent line connector that had been broken was my first clue. All right, so we're under the truck now, and up here you can see where all of the lines, all except one, come into the fuel pump to make their connections. So we've got the line that I was telling you about that goes to the charcoal canister in the rear. That's this big one here. And then we've got the supply and the return right here. There is another vent line in the back here, and that is a return from that charcoal canister. And I don't know if you can quite see the charcoal canister. It's right up there. It's big. And it sits right above where the spare tire carrier is. And you don't know if you can see the spare tire in there. But So my second clue, because the vent line comes with the tank, basically it pulls out with the tank, and you saw this one. And whoever fixed it actually did a pretty good job. They actually used a tie wrap around the lock portion of it, and it was secure. And the O-ring inside of it is still good. Now, if I can't find this connector, because I've been looking all week for it, if I can't find that connector, it's going to go back the way I found it, because it's just a vent line. But the other clue that I had that this had been replaced before is that the entire lock mechanism on the electrical connector for the fuel pump is broken. It's gone. It's just been destroyed. Now, the connector was in place. It still has a lock here, but there's a secondary lock here that keeps this lock from engaging. And so what I did is I went on to Rock Auto, ordered a brand new connector for that, which I'm going to put on before the tank goes back in. And I'm also going to replace the supply tube, which is this little hose right here, because the tank has always been hard to fill. So what happens is I go to fuel up the truck and I put the nozzle in, and 9 times out of 10, the pump shuts off. It clicks and then it shuts off. And a lot of that has to do with, the shitty pumps that we have to have out here in California with all these emissions, whatever. There's a big collar on there that's a vapor recovery that doesn't allow the vapors to go out in the atmosphere when you're pumping gas, and all this bullshit that the state requires. But the problem was that the tube here, the supply tube from the filler neck, was kinked. It was kinked in here. So the way it's in right now, it looks straight, but it was actually kind of like this, and you can see that it cuts off the area that the fuel can go in, and the hose is really stiff now. Like there's no movement. I really had a tough time getting it off the connector. So I ordered a new one of these along with that connector from Rock Auto. And I'm going to replace the tube. And I'm also going to replace that vent line that's connected to that connector. And I'm still hoping I can find that connector somewhere, but I'm not having any luck. So that's where we're at with the Ranger as far as the fuel tank and the fuel pump. What I'm working on today in the shop, because it's about 3 days after I got the tank out, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull the wheels off of the front, I'm going to replace the shocks, and then I have new inner rubber splash shields. And I was hoping that they would be just like the stock ones, but they're not. They're much thinner than the stock ones. You'll see when I pull the passenger side one off, it's quite a bit thicker material. But I'm going to replace both of these. So I bought a brand new one for the passenger side, which is this one. And I got a brand new one for the driver's side, which is this one over here. And I'm going to replace both of those because on the other side of the truck, on the driver's side, it's never had one. And so when you go through a puddle or anything like that, it kicks up all the water right up onto the exhaust. And cold water on hot exhaust isn't a good idea. I mean, it's been fine all these years, but I figure I might as well get that piece put back in. I think even though this truck came back with a clear Carfax check, is that I think this was in some type of collision, because it looks as though this fender was replaced. And when this fender was replaced, you can see like the coating that they put on the panels before they ship them so they don't rust. And they didn't properly prepare the inside under hood area of that panel before it got painted, and so all the paint is flaked off of it. And so I believe there was an issue with this side of the truck, and it never made it onto a Carfax or a car report to say that it was in an accident, but it doesn't really matter to me. The point is that that inner fender portion was never reinstalled after the repair work was done. And so I got one, I'm gonna put it in, and then that should take care of the front of the car while I wait on the rest of the parts for the fuel tank. We haven't done a music update in a while. Pearl Jam, Immortality. I've got the shock on over here on the driver's side. It was fairly uneventful. The hardest part of getting shocks back out is keeping the shaft from spinning. So like on most of the new shocks or replacement shocks, there's a hex where you can get whatever size wrenches in there to keep the thing from spinning as you're putting it on. But on some of the stock shocks that come with the vehicles like these, there's really nothing on there. So what I had to do is grab a pair of trusty channel locks, grab the shock around the top, and get it out. And yeah, these shocks were leaking, so you can see the remnants of the oil there. And they no longer extend out. They're supposed to be gas-filled shocks, so they should spring back when they're pulled out, and they don't. The two-piece bushing here it's pretty clapped out too, you can see. So it was time to replace them. You know, I went with my last Ranger. I got these shocks from Edelbrock. I forgot what they called them. I think they were like IAS. And they were variable dampening shocks. And I tell you, for a work truck, man, did they make that thing ride nice. In the back of all my Ranger pickups, I put the overload shocks. So they have a spring that's wrapped around the outside of them to give the truck a little bit more weight capacity, because with all the weight we ride around in, you know, with the toolboxes and the rack and the tools inside, you know, it can, you know, get the back end of the truck sagging. So even though this one's kind of the sport model, I think they call it the STX or something like that. So it's raised up, similar in height to a four-wheel drive. You put too much weight in the back and you know, it sags. So those helper spring type shocks in the back really help. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can round up the automotive fasteners that go in right here. So there's gonna be one there, there's one behind the light, and there's two over here to get this splash shield in. And I'll get that thing in and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, I was gonna turn the camera on when I was done with the other side, but I figured I'd show, this is the condition of the splash shield over here. So you can see it's all torn here. It's a little bit thicker, but it's more of like a composite material, like a rubber reinforced material on this side. And it gives me a better idea of what the actual, those little plastic push-in kind of Christmas tree fasteners looked like, since the ones on the other side were gone. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get some of those. They sell these at the local home center, so like Lowe's and Home Depot. So I'm gonna grab some more of those before I put this side back together. And I may even swap out the ones I have on the other side of the truck, because the ones I have on the other side of the truck are quite a bit wider in diameter. Now, that could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but I wanna get these out and get an idea of what the size is that the actual fastener is. Maybe it's a little bit bigger, maybe it's a little bit smaller. I want to make sure that I'm kind of putting the same size ones back in. So you have to remove this in order to get the shock out. There's really no other way to get to the shock other than to pull this off. So I'm going to destroy this thing getting it off because it's already falling apart. So that's why I bought another one for this side as well. AC/DC, Bad Boy Boogie. This side's all done with the exception of this one clip. So I'm gonna take this one clip with me to the home center and I'm going to match it up with the ones they have in stock. And I'm gonna replace the ones that I installed on the other side just so that they're the right ones. This one actually had one of the flat ones at the bottom here. So yeah, and the hole wasn't in this splash shield that I got. So what I did was I took a piece of tubing right here over this piece of wood, and I just used it as a punch to go through the rubber to get that hole located. And all I did to locate it was put the old splash shield over the new to locate the hole, marked it with a silver Sharpie, and then I knocked that out so that it lined up. And so I left one of the easiest ones to get to right there. That's the one I have out that I'm going to take to the home center. And this side's pretty much done. So probably catch up with you guys. Today's Saturday. My parts, my clip, my electrical connector, and my filler neck hose is supposed to be here Monday. So probably Monday night, I'll be putting the fuel pump in and getting everything ready to go back in the truck. I still got to drain the gas that's in the tank. There's probably another 1.5 gallons. And I want to drain that out just so that it's easier for Mrs. IE 427 and I to get the tank back in. And then we'll get that all put in and hook her up and start her up and make sure everything's cool. All right, everybody, my parts came in and I've got the fuel filler hose installed, and I'll kind of take you around the outside because you can't really see it. I've got the tank partially mounted in the truck. So down here, you can see I've got it rested on some blocks on the bridge jack for the lift. I got my new connector installed, so that's right here. So brand new connector. I left the wires a little long because I figured if I ever have to replace a fuel pump again, it'll be easier to get the connector undone. And then I've got the back vent from the charcoal canister, which is part of the evap system, attached to the tank already because the tank is high enough that I could get that connector mounted. So I think this is probably where I'm gonna leave it for tonight because it's about time to go in for dinner. But let me take you over here, and I think you'll be able to see the hoses. So right up there are the two hoses. So the new hose that we got for the filler neck is there, and then I replaced the 5/16 hose that goes to the vent to the fuel filler, and so those are both new hoses. And then you can kind of see here, let's see if I can get the light up inside there. Oh, you can't really see. How about here? Is that any better? So you can kind of see in there where the fuel filler hose is, and behind that is the 5/16 hose for the vent for the filler tube. So those two have to go on before you put the tank in because there's just no room to get in there and tighten up the clamps that secure those hoses to the fittings that are attached to the tank. So it's just a matter of kind of manipulating them up into the space until you can get the tank high enough that they'll kind of go over the frame. So we're gonna leave them like that for tonight. I'm gonna head out here tomorrow night, which will be what, Tuesday? And see if I can get the tank all back in place. And I don't know if I'm gonna lower everything down once I get it all in place and add fuel and start it, but it's kind of what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for a win before the end of this video, just so that the truck is running again, and hopefully our problem with not building fuel pressure will no longer persist and the thing will start up like it's supposed to. Because it ran just fine, but I was getting an error code for a O2 sensor, which means it was running rich. And I think that's because the fuel regulator wasn't doing what it was supposed to. When I had the gauge hooked up to the injector manifold, I was getting about 70 pounds of pressure, which it's not supposed to have at that at the fuel injection rail. So I'm hoping that this kind of clears that up. I did buy an O2 sensor, and it's the downstream O2 sensor. But I'm gonna wait to replace it until the light comes back on and see if maybe it was just a matter that it was running rich because we were having issues with the fuel pump regulator, or the fuel pressure regulator. But I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, it's next night. I've already got everything finished on the truck, and I actually already started it. But I didn't want to contaminate my test because I knew I was gonna have to prime the entire fuel system to get fuel to the front of the truck. So I did that, and I've let it sit for an hour, and that's the key, because what would happen is you'd take it somewhere and you'd come back to the truck and try to start it. It would be just impossible to start. So you'd have to turn the key on and off a number of times to prime the fuel system and get fuel to the front, and then it would finally start. So let's see if it starts right up. I'm hoping it will, because it should all be fixed now. And then that should end the video. I heard the fuel pump run. All right, so she's running, and it'll take a while for the idle to drop. I just put back in the fuel that I pulled out of it, which was about 3.5, maybe 4 gallons. So the fuel light's still on, meaning I've got low fuel, but the gauge is reading exactly where it read before. So hopefully that means that the sending unit that's also part of this thing is working the way it's supposed to. All right, so I think that's gonna do it. It took me about a week. You know, I wasn't in any great hurry to do this. So by the time I got the truck torn down, some of the parts I had, some I didn't, and I waited for those parts to come in. It's probably been a solid week, so 7 days. But I'm gonna look forward to getting the King's Cobra back up on the lift. So it's gonna go from here to where the Ranger is, and then of course the Mustang's gonna have to be moved back to this spot here, and then the dually can roll back in over here, and we'll have a little bit more normalcy going forward. But I just found out today that the wife's brakes are surging, so that means that she's mostly got a warped rotor that's gonna have to be machined or replaced, so yay. Anyways, if you guys are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.